everyone, so it's Katie here from the Queen of Teen Fiction and it's time for my September wrap-up. So I've only had a chance to read 3 books this month because I have been super busy working on a new design for my blog. I am exceptionally undecisive when it comes to my blog design, so I change it quite a lot. So the first book that I've read this month and really adored, I think it is an exceptionally important book, is George by Alex Gino. So everyone sees George as a boy, but she knows that she was truly meant to be a girl. And when her teacher announces that her school is going to be doing an adaptation of Charlotte's Web, George is desperate for the main role of Charlotte. And she absolutely nails the audition, but her teacher doesn't take her very seriously because she only sees George as a boy. So George and her best friend Kelly come up with a cunning plan to get George on the stage in her dream role of Charlotte. This is a transgender book aimed at children, and I just think that is desperately important because there aren't enough books like this aimed at kids. To know that kids are going to be able to pick books up like this off the shelf and find characters that they relate to if they are going through some of the same problems as George is just really inspiring. I am very, very glad that this book was published and I hope to see more books like this in stores. What I also found really fantastic about this book was how it deals with George's home life. It shows how her mother is coming to terms with the fact that her son is actually her daughter. There are also some really, really touching scenes between George and her brother, Scott. I'm not going to lie, I was definitely moved to tears by that scene. Not because it's sad, but it's because Scott is so accepting when I didn't really know how he'd react to George admitting that she was truly a girl. So this book is probably one of my favourites that I've read this year. I'm so glad I got the chance to read it. I have reviewed George on my blog and I'll leave a link to it in the description if you want to go and check that out. Even though this book is aimed at children, it is for everyone to read and I think everyone should read it. It's also really, really funny as well. It's not just a serious issue kind of book all the way through, even though it does deal with real hard-hitting issues. It is exceptionally funny. The scenes between George and her best friend Kelly are just fabulous, so I was laughing throughout most of it as well. So I'm definitely recommending George to everyone this month. The second book that I read this month is The Sky is Everywhere by Jandy Nelson. I have been meaning to read this book for a long time because I've heard so many great things about it, and I'm so glad that I finally have. This book follows Lenny Walker in her battle with grief after the death of her sister Bailey. Also grieving for Bailey is her boyfriend Toby, and that grief brings Toby and Lenny together. And of course that leaves Lenny feeling exceptionally guilty. When Lenny goes back to school after taking time off after her sister's death, she also meets the new guy, Joe. She ends up forming a connection with Joe, and he kind of ends up being the light that leads her forward out of grief, whereas Toby is kind of sucking her back into her grief. So it shows Lenny kind of stuck between these two boys and each one meaning something different for her. Whilst it sounds like a complicated love triangle, it's really not. Her connection with Toby isn't really romantic, it is just more to do with their shared grief over Bailey. But obviously that does end up causing a lot of problems which unfold throughout the story. I really enjoyed this book because it dealt with grief in a way I've not seen another YA book do. In the book, Lenny writes poetry on any random scraps she can find out on the street, including coffee cups and sweet wrappers. She often writes about her and her sister, to basically immortalise Bailey, to know that those poems are out there with memories of Bailey in them. And the poems are included at the start of each chapter, and I really, really like that. There aren't many YA books that include poetry the way this one does, and some of them are really, really beautiful, so I loved reading them just as much as I loved reading the rest of the story. Although it is a book about grief, it's also about hope and moving forward. And the characters are so fantastic. Lenny's grandma and her uncle are such vibrant characters, and I like how it showed how each individual deals with the loss of a much-loved family member. So I definitely enjoyed this book and it's a fantastic contemporary. So the third and final book that I've read this month is a book that I have read before, and it is Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. I have been reading this as part of a Fangirl read-along which was hosted by My Kinda Book. If you have not read Fangirl before, then I made a video about it a couple of weeks ago, so I'll leave a link to that in the description so you can check it out and find out what Fangirl is all about. I'm part of a group of official UK fangirls, and so because of that I was sent a signed copy of Fangirl by Rainbow, which is so exciting. I won't bother going over the details for Fangirl again because it's in my other video, but I can't stress enough how much I think you should read this book if you haven't read it yet. It's one of my all-time favourites. So that is what I have been reading throughout September. I am currently reading a couple of other books, but I know that I won't get them finished by the end of September, so they are not included in this video. But I am reading like 3 books at once at the moment, so hopefully I'll get them all read in October and tell you all about them. So do let me know what you've been reading this month in the comments. Also, what are you reading for October? Are you going to be reading any spooky books in preparation for Halloween? So I hope you've enjoyed this wrap up. Thank you for watching. I will see you next time. Bye! I've just got a paper cut. Why would you hurt me this way?